is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Well, a bright spot this week has been the president of Argentina, Javier Milei, going to Davos and addressing the World Economic Forum and telling those noblesse oblige-addled, dirt-munching, druid douchebags.
Wow.
What time it is.
Damn it.
Here was his warning to the West, and of course that starts with America.
So this is something we have lived through, and we are here to warn you about what can happen if the countries in the Western world that became rich through the model of freedom stay on this path of servitude. The case of Argentina is an empirical demonstration that no matter how rich you may be or how much you may have in terms of natural resources or how skilled your population may be or educated or how many bars of gold you may have in the central bank. If measures are adopted that hinder the free functioning of markets, free competition, free price systems, if you hinder trade, if you attack private property, the only possible fate is poverty.
And specifically, his message to sheepish business people unwilling to stand up to the state: go find your inner Hank Reardon.
I would like to leave a message for all business people here and for those who are not here in person but are following from around the world. Do not be intimidated either by the political class or by parasites who live off the state. Do not surrender to a political class that only wants to stay in power and retain its privileges. You are social benefactors. You're heroes. You're the creators of the most extraordinary period of prosperity we've ever seen. Let no one tell you that your ambition is immoral. If you make money, it's because you offer a better product at a better price, thereby contributing to general well-being. Do not surrender to the advance of the state. The state is not the solution. The state is the problem itself. You are the true protagonists of this story. And rest assured that as from today, Argentina is your staunch, unconditional ally. Thank you very much, and long live freedom. Damn it.
The ending's the best, though.
The translator didn't quite get the verve of Milei, but it's not bad. I hope that inspired Jim Iuorio to find his inner Hank Reardon. Jim Iuorio is the host of the Future's Edge podcast. He's also one of those heroes that Milei was talking about. He's a proprietor of Brandt's restaurant in Palatine. Jim, are you going to answer the call?
Yes. Well, I think I was kind of a pioneer on that, too. I have never been ashamed of my desire for more money and a better life than where I came from. And by the way, I didn't come from some slum anywhere, but I came from a very, very modest means, and I love employing people, making money, and this notion. And the fact that they let him go and speak at the World Economic Forum thing in Davos is amazing to me. I don't know how that slipped through the cracks or what they thought they were going to get from him, but he is 100% correct. Socialism is the ideology of the bitter, the jealous. It's immoral. It's the most ridiculous thing ever. And we know for certain now there's a mountain of history since the 1800s where capitalism was started to be implemented broadly across the world, how poverty went from 90% of the people on this planet living in poverty to 9% in the matter of 150 years. If you want to act like that's not real and it's not due to capitalism, it's completely asinine. But to him, Milei, is that how you pronounce the name? I love that guy. Every time I hear him speak, I mean, if I was his buddy, I'd probably tell him to get a haircut or clean it up a little bit because it looks
I like it.
Oh, I love it.
No, he
brought
looks like
chainsaws to campaign events. Did you know that, Jim?
I thought that was fantastic.
His hair, he looks like a pudgy Dudley Moore. And that connotes Arthur, and that's sort of fun. And he is, and when he comes and he won't bend the knee before the World Economic Forum, Klaus and the boys and girls there. I mean, how fun is that?
Yeah, and it's fantastic. You guys are right. I will offer the hair. I'd like to. From the record. But this Davos thing, these stations who have celebrated it for so long, and at its core, all it is is unelected billionaires who have realized that aligning themselves together can create more power and influence policy around the world, policy that we didn't ask for and we didn't vote them in. To me, it's always been a completely ridiculous thing. And you look at these stations like CNBC who go there and all they do is lick the boots of all these people that are there like, oh, this is wonderful. No, it's not wonderful. It's not what we voted for. And everything swings the pendulum. And the three of us, I think, can feel the pendulum swinging back. And I think that's very exciting. I hate the fact that we had to get to this point, but I think it's pretty exciting.
Well, another pendulum may be swinging in a less productive direction. Speaking of Davos, Maria Bartiromo spoke to Howard Lutnick, who's the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald. He said he thinks there could be $700 billion to $1 trillion in commercial defaults coming this year and into next year. He said, I think it's going to be very, very ugly, a very, very ugly market in owning real estate over the next 18 months, 2 years. What say you?
I think he was specifically talking about commercial real estate, right?
Yes, right. I said that, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's where the big cracks are in the whole thing. That you go through the stats on some of these city centers where there used to be flourishing, and now you see empty offices, and you hear stories about them trying to get tenants back. It's not working. I think it's an enormous deal. But the something that's odd is that this has been going on for a couple of years. I expected to see some huge stories about banks going under because they had too much exposure to commercial real estate, and it hasn't happened yet. So the way I believe this plays out, and I do agree with him, I think the cracks will start to form. And then we live in a bailout nation, so it's always every time something gets even the slightest bit economically scary, the federal government tries to bail everything out, which, too, by the way, I think is one of the whole things with the migrants and the crime, but that's a whole different show. But once they start to bail people out, and they don't have the money to bail people out anymore. I'm giving a speech in Phoenix on Wednesday to a group of farmers, and we're going to talk about what the big risks are for 2024. Big risks are this. The national debt over the last 50 years has had 5 big slope changes and never retreated at all in that slope. And the last one that began in 2020 has gone parabolic. The market for our debt, and I don't want to get too wonky here, but we sell bonds to raise money to spend profligately as the government does. But anytime they've gone outside of 2-year bonds, the market doesn't want to lend us money as much anymore. And that's where a huge problem is, because they're too stupid to realize that they've saturated the market with U.S. debt, particularly long end, and need to dial it back, and they won't do it. And they'll keep spending money and keep borrowing money, and that's when the bad things can happen.
Bad things such as?
So the bad things, like when we get our debt downgraded, it's kind of nonsense because we're always going to pay you back. U.S. Treasuries are always going to print money to pay you back. So when the debt gets downgraded, really what it means is they may pay you back in cheaper dollars. In other words, creating tons of money, flushing it into the system, and paying you back with a deflated dollar, with a dollar that's not worth what it was before. And in that situation, I want to be long things like obviously not commercial real estate. We started with that because there's no demand for that, but other sort of land, gold, silver, platinum, things that do well in a weak dollar environment. And anyone who's listening says, well, the dollar's not weak. The dollar's strong. Look at the dollar index. The dollar index measures the dollar against the euro and the yen, 2 other countries who are involved in the same sort of nonsense we are in creating additional money. Measure the dollar against a bag of groceries. Measure the dollar against an ounce of gold. That's how you get the dollar's value.
Well, that's what the Godfather, Rick Santelli, was saying last week, is look at February of 2020 to November of 2023. It takes $1.19 in 2023 to buy what you paid $1 for in February of 2020. And so what you're saying is if that's the way things go, then you're not getting the average American family is not getting any relief from those inflationary price increases anytime soon.
Not just any relief, not any relief.
It gets a bit worse.
They're being sacrificed to the gods of this whole entire thing. So part of the speech next week too is just quotes, like 20 different quotes of Fed governors saying how they need inflation. This was prior to 2020. They needed it because everyone was so indebted, particularly the big 5 states, of which we are standing in one of them right now, pacing in one of them actually. Of the big 5 states, they could not possibly pay their bills unless the government created something just south of massive inflation. Well, they overshot their mark and created massive inflation. But this was the plan. You know how we know it was the plan? They told us it was the plan. This is not some crazy tinfoil hat Jim Iuorio theory. They told us they needed inflation. They told us why, and they got it. So right now, the people who are in the lower column, 40%, you are being sacrificed so Illinois doesn't have to default and can pay its pensions. So I hope you're happy with what you voted for.
And is the market too optimistic in terms of expectations for rate cuts? And if the rate cuts do not happen at the level that is priced in right now, then what is your prognosis for market return in the end of the first quarter, beginning of the second, into the third?
So today's an interesting day. If we can keep, because we just kind of made new highs today in the S&P, this is the pre-market, and if we can settle above here, I think I can make a fundamental bullish case for the stock market. It's not about good things. It's about not just, we talked about when the Fed's going to ease. The market knows that the Fed will ease at some point in time, and they've been wrong on it quite a few times. But if the Cantor Fitzgerald CEO is correct, and there starts to be big cracks in the commercial real estate market, perhaps the Fed will ease. But at the end of the day, we talked about government debt and money creation over the last 3 years. But there's still approximately, by my thumbnail calculations, about $2.5 to $3 trillion above trend of monetary growth that happened just because of the COVID strategy. And that's still out there sloshing around, and it still ends up you have to kind of predict where money's going to end up, and it ends up a lot of times in risk assets like stocks. So I like other things better than stocks because I do think once the big bank headline comes across, stocks could have a quick 12%, 15% break. I like other things better, but on my list of weak dollar things to own, stocks are not necessarily off that list. And this is a bad thing because it's been 20 years that you buy stocks because of low rates and a profligate spending government. That's the wrong reason to buy stocks. I'd want to be buying stocks because they're deregulating, creating a better business environment, but that's just not the case.
Hey, Jim, we got a question from a listener real quick. Is a repeat of that 1989-90 commercial real estate crash coming? I'm the developer of buildings that I helped design that have gone under.
Yeah, I believe it is. I wish I could say something different, but I believe that the whole commercial real estate model, particularly in urban centers, at the trend it's going now, does not have a very bright future, in my opinion.
Prudential just moved out. They're leaving their Randolph Street skyscraper after 7 decades.
That's great news.
You know what the most amazing thing is? Remember, Mark Benioff, the guy from Salesforce? He's voted for these measures in San Francisco for the last 2 decades that have increased crime in the city. And then last year he has the gall to on his conference call say, we're thinking about moving out of San Francisco. There's just too much crime. You've got to be kidding me. You literally are the guy who pushed for these things for so many years. That guy, what an unbelievable hypocrite.
It sounds like great news to me because it just frees up more space for migrants in urban centers, and that's what they want. So it's wonderful.
Put them in the Prudential building.
Jim Iuorio, host of the Future's Edge podcast, proprietor of Brandt's Restaurant in Palatine. Jim, thanks as always.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
You too, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's what Chicago is talking about. It's Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy on AM 560. The Answer.
Calling all firearm owners, enthusiasts, and Second Amendment patriots. Both experienced and novice customers are cordially invited to visit MOA Industries in Bensenville. MOA Industries is a Class 7 firearms dealer providing a myriad of services, including firearm sales, gunsmithing, certified Cerakote application, laser engraving, firearms instruction on a private range, firearms transfers for only $40, and discounts for veterans and first responders. With a large selection